Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Priscilla Chigariro. If you are new here, please go back and start from chapter 1, part 1, or else none of this will make any sense. But I wanted to thank everybody who's been watching for all your comments and all your shares. I see you. Thank you so much. It is really helping me actually a lot dealing with this, with the residual trauma from this experience. Actually sharing has made me feel so much better than I actually thought that it would, but it's really done so much for me. I feel so much better. I feel so supported and I feel like I'm not crazy, which is how I was starting to feel. But yeah, thank you guys so much for everything that you've done for me. I feel stronger. I feel so much better. And I am actually looking forward to this year because I actually feel like there's just so much more I can do now, having gotten past this story. But without further delay, please grab your drink or your snack and let us get into the rest of chapter 4. When we got into the car to start our journey back to Boston after I had cleared all of the documents with the border control and the marshals, my son, from when I actually saw him, was reunited with him, he had been acting like, very okay, very strong, just smiling, acting very normal. As soon as we got into the car, like before we even drove away, he just, like, I think he had been holding everything within himself, like for like the past 2 days. He just burst. He just like started talking about what had happened, like describing everything and crying like I could not. Like I was like, my friend and I, she didn't even start driving. Like we just sat there listening to him. It was so sad. I felt so sad. Like, how could a person claim to love their child, claim to have their best interests at heart, and be willing to put them through a situation like this? Because how else did he think it was going to end? Honestly, you are willing to put your child through something so awful just because of the way that you feel about the other parent. It was just so much, like too much for me. And like the worst part of it all was that he was actually afraid for his dad. He was afraid of, like, that they had hurt him, what was going to happen to him, where was he right now. He was extremely confused because he obviously didn't know the dynamics of our relationship. He just obviously knew that we were not together, but then he didn't know any of the details of any of the things that his father had done. I had protected him as much as I could from knowing anything. He was just a child. He had no part to play in this entire story, so he didn't deserve to be harmed in any way. So I tried to reassure him that his father was going to be fine, that they hadn't hurt him, that I would try my best to find out as much as I could and like let him know where he was and when he would potentially be seeing him again. I have never actually, no matter how awful my ex was to me during our marriage, I never wanted my children to not have him around, because I know the damage that happens to children when they are missing a parent or when a parent is not active in their lives. So it was, for me, I was, I felt like it was in their best interest for them to have both of us. So even though all of this like stuff had happened between us, I still did my best to try to maintain some form of communication between the two of them, obviously supervised, but never completely take him away, because I also didn't want him to think that I was doing it on purpose or keeping his father away from him on purpose, which is like, I think they had probably discussed some possibility of there being police or something like that, because he also asked me if I was the one who had called the police, if I was the one who had his dad arrested, and I told him that it wasn't entirely my own decision, because I don't control what the police do. And if you do something bad as an adult, the police will come and get you. And I discussed with him the whole like what had happened to him was that his father had actually taken him without my permission, which was something that wasn't allowed. And eventually he understood it, even though he was still extremely traumatized. He was not sleeping well. He kept talking about it, about the whole, like, especially the arrest. That was the most traumatic thing for him. And I realized like that his whole mind, like everything, his whole world was now pretty upside down, because he had been with his dad for the past 2.5 years. And I had only been around again for about 6 months. And he had kind of like really securely attached himself to his dad. So he was feeling this major loss. And I knew that I myself, by myself, could not fix this for him. So I started immediately, as soon as we got back, looking for a therapist for him to help me navigate this whole situation, and to kind of also help him to understand what was going on, and to kind of like, give him tools to manage like all of this trauma that he had experienced in his very short life. He was only 8 years old at this time. We got back home. And this was on a Friday when we arrived. And I basically had Saturday and Sunday to arrange all of his like clothing, backpack, etc., everything that he needed for school, because he had to go back to school on the Monday. He had already missed a couple of days of school. And my lawyer said to me, you know what? Put him back in school immediately and make sure that everything is perfect. Just get his life back to normal, to exactly like what it was, as close as possible before, which for me was an extremely big ask, because number one, I was not working in the US. My restaurant was closed in Zimbabwe, so I had zero income. So far, I had been surviving on the goodwill of people around me and my sister. And now I was just handed this child who came with a small suitcase with only 2 pairs of underwear, I think like one other change like of clothing, and that was it. And I had to get everything with the zero income that I had, and to now start taking care of 2 children with no contribution from their father, nothing. I spoke to my sister and she helped me. She like immediately like jumped into gear, sent me money to go and buy like the things that we needed immediately, like his backpack and clothing for a week. And because she has a boy as well who is 1 year older than my son, she packed up like a big box of clothing and shipped it to me. But she basically, and this was winter, so it was like winter jackets and boots and things like that I had to buy. It was a lot. And then on top of all that, I had to drive him 1 hour to school and then come back 1 hour, then go back and pick him up another hour, drive back. So I was driving 4 hours a day to take him to school and back. And I did this it was January, February, March, April, May. Yeah, I did it for 6 months. Yeah, 5.5 months. Until mid-June. 5.5 months driving 4 hours every day to and from school. And after the first month, you know, my sister had been helping me out and stuff, but then she has her own family to think about. And it was becoming so heavy for me. I had no clue. Like I wasn't allowed to work. I am still not allowed to work. There was no one I could ask for money. My ex was not even volunteering to help with anything. Though he was incarcerated, his mother was still not incarcerated. She was paying for his lawyers, paying for everything, and paying for their accommodation and their bills, but not even giving 1 cent towards maintenance of his children. So my sister helped me, and then my lawyer again came to the rescue. She applied for government assistance for me. She was like, you know what, it's a long shot, but you know, let's just try it anyway. She did this application. I signed everything. They sent it in, and thankfully, at the end of January, beginning of February, it was approved, and I started getting government assistance, which made all the difference. But by then, I was so depressed. Like, I could feel myself sinking. Everything that I had wanted, like, you know, my children, I had, but I had all these limitations. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything to help myself. And I was like, I couldn't even drop the ball. I could not take my son to school. I couldn't even get depressed. Basically, I had to keep it together because there was just so much responsibility that was just thrown on me all at once without me actually having any preparation or ample support to be able to hold it together. But somehow we made it through January, and February came. The government assistance started coming in. It wasn't a lot, but at least it was something. I was able to actually start, you know, being able to pay for my own gas, pay for my own food and things like that, to get things for the kids and so on, which was like, it made like a world of difference to my life. My ex, in the meantime, was, from when he was arrested, he was held in Canada for a month. He was held in an immigration detention center, and in a detention center because it actually wasn't a proper prison. The prisoners, I guess, were still allowed to communicate with people that were outside the prison. Like they could do what was almost like a Skype call, but then it was like I think it was like a private network. They would send me an email with the link, and then he would be able to talk to the children via that link, but he would have to speak in English only, and I supervised the calls. So all of January they did that, and then at the beginning of February he was extradited to New York, upstate New York. I think he stayed there for about a week, and then he was transported to Massachusetts and able to see a judge. The judge released him on bail, but part of his bail conditions were that he was not allowed to come near the children or myself, and he was not allowed to contact us either in any way. But he came out guns blazing. Around mid-February, he filed, I guess it was 3 applications. The first one, he filed an application for like restoration of like the previous status, which means that he wanted my son to be, our son, to be returned into his custody until a custody hearing was done. That was application number 1. Application number 2, he applied for my daughter's documents to be taken away from me because he claimed that I was a flight risk, that I was planning to leave the United States with the children, basically kidnapping them. And the third one, Yes, there were two applications that I remember. But basically, the application for my daughter's documents to be taken away was an ex parte. So obviously he got the judgment for that. You usually have an ex parte hearing if you feel as though the other party is going to act in a particular way if they know that the proceedings are happening. So he was basically implying that if I was notified about this hearing, I would immediately pack up the kids and I would fly out of the United States, which of course was ridiculous. I had no plans to leave this country. Why? And go back to Zimbabwe where I was at risk? No. So I still complied anyway with the orders. I handed in my daughter's passport, and then we had a hearing in front of the same judge, actually, who he had not shown up for when she had told him to return. So she's the one who heard his case about returning our son to him. And she was just like, no. It was actually, when I got here, I had completely lost faith in the judicial system. Completely. I lost faith in courts. I had lost faith in police. I just associated all of those institutions with corruption and with potentially trying to harm me because of my experiences in Zimbabwe. So if I saw a cop or if I had to go to court, it was, for me, it caused me a lot of stress, and I just felt like it was just somebody else who's just going to try to do something harmful to me. So for the first time, I felt like I was getting justice. I didn't even have to do anything. I didn't even have to try to fight for my case because it was actually obvious. So she did basically everything. My lawyer hardly did anything because she was 100% aware of all of the intricacies of the case because she had been handling it from December, from when he had disappeared. So she basically was like, no, you kidnapped this child. Right now you have criminal charges against you. And also the part of your bail release is that you can't even see this child. So how can you even file an application to have this child returned to you? That makes no sense. So she denied his application. And then after that, his lawyer contacted mine and started trying to make arrangements for him to see the kids and to see if we could bypass the court and if I would agree on my own to let him see the children. I discussed this with my lawyer and we both agreed that yes, it was in the best interest of the children for them to see him because they knew that he was out of prison. And my son did want to see him, and there was no reason for me not to allow him to see him as long as it was supervised visitation. So in March, we agreed on supervised visitation, which would begin in April, and he would see the kids about twice a week, 2 hours each time with the supervisor. Present at all times. He wouldn't be able to go to his house or anything like that to have the visitations. It had to be in a public place. It was extremely crazy. And the thing is, in my mind, I just kept thinking to myself, I don't understand what would drive him to do something so crazy, to attempt to kidnap this child again and to purposefully kind of damage or put yourself in a position where you're at a disadvantage. I didn't understand, and I still don't understand what the benefit of all of this was. It just makes me kind of feel at some stage I started feeling maybe there was something that I was missing. Was I crazy? Was I missing something? Was there some kind of special plan or something that I was missing that I was not seeing? You start to think like that, is it normal for someone to behave in this way, or am I the one who is abnormal? Then I got a new lawyer because my lawyer, she was still there, but then she was, she had other clients, obviously, and my case was going on a lot longer than she had thought. So, and she needed backup. She needed like a fresh lawyer who could come, because now I had this new custody case, and the custody case involved child support, alimony, like all of those things. And so she felt like it would be good to get a fresh lawyer. She would be there to support with all the previous facts, etc., but to get someone who was fresh, who could work on this. So just as those lawyers came on to my team, his lawyer sent us an email saying that he wanted to settle, which was like the thing that I had wanted from the very beginning. For us to just sit down and to write a settlement, to write an agreement of how we were going to manage everything and just move on with our lives. So in April, they drafted they created their draft, we created our draft, and then the two were merged. And it literally did not even take a long time. It was like mid-April when this started. By the end of April, just before the end of April, and that was like basically like I think like 10 days, we were done. Contract signed, everything agreed on. There really was not much back and forth, because he made an offer which was which would cover child support and everything. And it was a very, very reasonable offer, something which is what I would have asked for. And my lawyers were like, oh, okay, well, obviously, yes, we accept. So 10 days, literally. And like after almost 4 years of fighting, he suddenly just agreed, only because I guess his lawyers told him that because of this kidnapping attempt, there was no way that he was ever going to get custody. And if he even came close to getting like shared custody, it would not even be with him being a primary. So we signed this agreement at the end of April. I felt like my life could suddenly begin. I could stop fighting. More like I wasn't even fighting. I could stop being on the defensive and actually focus on actually just moving forward and rebuilding, which was the most exciting thing for me. Like the day I signed this contract was the best day that I had had in forever. I think I must have called like absolutely everybody, my father, like everyone. When I signed this agreement, I was so happy. I felt like, oh my God, finally I get to actually start living after such a long time. He had finally given up. So part of our agreement, it was like ironclad. My lawyer had combed through that document, like I don't know how many times, and I did too, looking for any loopholes, making sure that we had tight security in place. She was now going to be the one who would be keeping our children's passports. My ex would not be able to travel with the children to any country that was not a signatory to the treaty with the US. There would be like no travel without like prior notification, full itinerary, and letters, me giving permission, and like a ton of other security is in place. And also even that travel would not even be happening in the first year, because he would also eventually have 45% of the time with the kids, and I would have 65%. But at the beginning, since he was still dealing with this criminal case and all of that, we would start gradually. He would continue with the supervised visitation and then move into like day visits, etc., so that it would be a build up. And then by October, we would be at 65-45, which is where it would stay. And then we also agreed that for the summer holiday last year, I would have 3 consecutive weeks with the kids in August. He would have 3 weeks spread out throughout the summer with the kids. And in between, they would be with me for the whole week. So For me, this was amazing. For the first time in 3 years, I actually had a day where I was by myself entirely, no kids, just chilling, just doing me. This had not happened in years. So I loved that. It was amazing. I actually started to grow. I started to think. I started to develop. I started looking for my own place. I started this like straight after we signed the agreement. I found an agent who started looking around for apartments for me. That took forever, but then, you know, I was patient. I was just happy that this was done. I could move on with my life and I could actually start rebuilding and planning and going forward. But then, you know, emotionally, I felt like I had a lot of work to do, but I was ready to just kind of put this back behind me and just move forward with my life. So that is actually around the time that I started my Instagram page, Glam and Vintage. That was actually at the very beginning of April. Like, I had just been through like this horrible depression, and it was mostly because of like feeling so weak and feeling so broken down because of the situation that I was in. I felt trapped because I couldn't work, I couldn't provide for my children, I couldn't do anything, and it all stemmed from this horrible situation that had happened. But I kind of got out of that and started my page, started rebuilding myself, started rebuilding my confidence, my self-esteem, and just like, you know, starting to feel stronger and better. In June, after when the summer holidays began, I went to New York. I took my son to a concert. It felt so amazing to actually be able to do things that normal people do. I felt like, because of this trauma and all of these years that I lived like basically in a state of emergency, you don't go and do anything fun. You don't go to concerts. You don't go to, like, those are the last thing on your mind. And also financially, you can't even afford it. I couldn't even afford to do anything. So it made me so happy that I could take him to a concert to watch like an amazing pianist, because my son plays violin. He loves music. So I took him to this concert in New York. My ex also decided to go to New York around the same time because he was like, oh, he's also been stuck here in Massachusetts because of this whole situation, as if he didn't cause it. So he was also like happy to travel somewhere. So we actually, like, you know, him on his side, me on my side, we traveled, we like, you know, exchanged the kids in New York. Everything was perfect and things were going really well. And then to make things even better, at the end of June, my agent called me and said to me, Priscilla, there is an apartment that is available. Like right now, you need to tell me if you're going to take it. Like right now, there's not even time to show it to you. But then he had shown me an apartment in the building that was next door, and they were all this, the floor plan was all the same. And I was like to him, yes, I'm taking it. Yes, I will like pay, do everything. Like tell me where to send it. So in literally like 2 days, we did that. It was done. And he told me that the apartment would be available at the end of July. It wasn't soon enough for me, but then I was patient. I was good. So in July, I just started, you know, creating my mood board and preparing to move into this apartment, which basically signified a new beginning for me. It was going to be, and it was, this was the first time I had had my own home in 4 years. Since the beginning of this situation, I had been living in people's houses out of a suitcase, like never actually fully unpacking, never like actually like using any of my own things, because I was always in somebody else's home, or like in a rental, like a temporary rental or an Airbnb. It was just crazy. So I felt so encouraged. I felt like, you know, I would come, I would decorate this place, really make it my own, and, you know, start living my life. July came, and on the 27th of July, my landlord said that the apartment was empty a little bit earlier than he expected. So I was welcome to move in. He had left the keys in the apartment. So I came here, walked in, got my keys, walked around. It was just like, you know, when you just like sit there. I actually sat in here for a little bit, no furniture and all, and I just, you know, I felt so thankful. It felt for me like I had actually reached this milestone. I had made it. I had come so far. I thought back to like 4 years before when this entire ordeal had started, and I was in Russia. I had no idea that I would actually make it to the United States. It seemed like it was so far away. I'd never felt as lost as I felt when I was in Russia. You know, you feel the actual distance when you're in a situation like that, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get there? And here I was sitting in my own apartment. It was amazing. That same day, I went to IKEA, bought like some plates and a lot of basics, like, you know, for your bathroom, and like some pots and pans, like, you know, a lot of like started things for my kitchen and stuff. And I brought them back here, and I spent my first night, 27th of July 2022, in this apartment. And my plan, because that same week there was actually like a lot going on that I had planned for that week. On the 28th, the next day, my sister was arriving from Florida, because we had planned to drive down to Florida. We were going on a road trip. I was taking the kids on a road trip, and we were going to go to Disneyland and all of that on the Sunday, which was going to be the 1st of August. So my sister would arrive on the 28th. She would help me move all of my stuff from the friend whose house I was staying at and bring everything into my apartment. And then like the 29th, which was a Friday, and the 30th, we would sort out the apartment. I would show her around Boston, and we would pack and be ready so that on the 1st, which was Sunday, my ex would bring the kids, and we would just pack up everything and we would start driving. So 27th, I slept in this apartment, and then on the 28th, early in the morning, I woke up a little bit earlier than usual. Like I was up around 6, but I didn't get out of bed. I just had a mattress. I just got a mattress which I slept on. So I kind of like, you know, when you just kind of like wake up and then you sort of are like, you know, in between sleep and wakefulness. I was kind of like in between that. And for like about 10-15 minutes, then I heard some voices outside and like some knocking downstairs. I ignored it because I figured it had nothing to do with me, because literally I had just moved in the night before. Then I heard chatter downstairs, and then I heard like footsteps coming up, because I only have one neighbor on the ground floor, and then we share a stairwell which comes up, and I'm on the top floor. So I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I kind of still ignored it because I was like, nothing to do with me. And then I heard a knock, but like a pretty urgent knock on my door. I was like, okay. Got up, just tied a sarong around me, came to the door, like knocking again. I came to the door and I was like, who is it? Then I heard FBI. My mind, I immediately started thinking, oh God, what did I do? Why are they here? What did I do? What is happening? They're obviously here to take me. What is going on? They knocked again and they said, open the door. I opened the door. I was shaking. I was just like confused, shaking, scared. Never been so scared in my life. I opened the door and they sort of pushed the door in to sort of like help me, like, you know, how like when I just twisted the knob and they pushed the door in the rest of the way. I sort of stepped in the room and I looked at them like terrified, and they said to me, go and get dressed and bring your phone. I was like, I told them my name immediately. I'm like, are you looking for me? Because they didn't even ask me who I was. They didn't even say anything. They just told me to get dressed and get my phone. I was terrified. I told them my name and they were like, yes, we know who you are, get dressed. I don't even know how I got dressed. I was shaking. And all that was going on in my mind was, what on earth did he tell them? Why are they here? What is happening? I felt like I was in Zimbabwe all over again. I have never ever had a good experience with police coming to my house. I felt like this is it. And these are not just your day-to-day police. This is the FBI. What had they come here for? If were here, they were here to take me. And whatever it was, I was going to be deported, and that was it. It was over for me. I got dressed. I picked up my phone. I came back and I just tried to hand it to them, and they said to me, switch it off and put it in the kitchen. I switched off my phone, walked and put it on the counter in the kitchen, and then I came back and I looked at them, waiting for them to tell me what had happened, what it was that they wanted, what I had done.